Baruch haba, welcome to Aliyah yomi, part of our Language of the Prophets series. I am Rabbi Yirmeyah ben Avram, and today we'll be stepping through Torah portion Toldot, the fifth Aliyah. The fifth Aliyah of Toldot is found in Bereshit, chapter 26, verses 30 through chapter 27, verse 27. Quite a long Aliyah. So I may try to temper some of my comments regarding Chazal and focus more on language and getting through quicker today because I'm not sure how well everyone took the 1.5 hours I gave to the first Aliyah. We'll see. If I feel led by Ruach HaKodesh, then so be it. Maybe I'll make it into two parts for those who want to stomach through all of it. All right, so let's get started. Verse Lamed, which is 30, so it's chapter 26, verse 30. Vayas lahem ishtehei, vayacholu vayishtuhu. All right, notice there's no etnachta, no atnach in this one. So this first one, vayas, if you don't recognize the verb, it's asa. Oh, no. It didn't understand my pen motions. I was trying to draw the hay for you there. Pen. There we go. So ayin, seen, and then hay at the end of this verb. That's the actual root. Asa, which you should know. Ya'as means he will do or he will make, and then the vav, conversive, swaps it to and he made. So, or in this case, probably better to translate so he made or then he made, lahem, for them, a mishteh, which is a feast. Vayachalu vayishtu, and they ate and they drank. This is from Shata, with a hay at the end. For those of you who have been to Israel, certainly you've seen the enigmatic Shtu Coca-Cola shirts. If you haven't, I recommend you buy this. Please buy one from the Jewish section of the city, yeah? And I have quite a story. Maybe I'll share it real quickly. One time I was in the Arab section of the old city, and I'd always wanted one of these Stu Coca-Cola shirts, and never had one. And so I started haggling with one of the guys there, one of the sellers about it, and we agreed on a price. And then he started talking about me in Arabic negatively to like a younger fellow that was there, and I got the gist of what they were saying. And so I smiled and I said, actually, let me think about it. And then he started shouting at me, and he switched to English, I will kill you. Can you imagine such a thing? And so I stepped back out of his shop. He followed me out into the street with his accusation. This is a very, very fat man shouting at me. So it was kind of hilarious that he thinks he's going to kill me. At the time, I was pretty in shape, And I pointed to the two Ethiopian Jewish Israelis holding machine guns nearby, and they said, "You're going to kill me? What do you think they will do to you if you kill me right here in the street?" So anyway, I bought the same shirt that same day in the new city from a Jewish seller, and it was a great price, and they were very nice. And I even asked them, "Could you please not put the English on there, the drink Coca-Cola? I just want it all in the nice cursive Hebrew, the Stu Coca-Cola. It's, I like it that way. I don't like it to be dumbed down. Let people figure it out. It's a red shirt with white writing, and you can tell, right?" Yeah, sure, no problem. So they custom made it for me. It was great. Everybody's happy, So, yeah, there's a lot of people, if you've never visited Jerusalem, although it's a gem and it's wonderful, they don't realize the hatred that is there from many of the Muslims who call themselves Palestinians, which is really not an ethnicity. It means they're ethnic Jordanians. A few might be ethnic Egyptians, but there's no such ethnicity as Palestinian. It's just not a thing. The Palestinians are Jews. I mean, even under the British occupation, the identity cards of the Arabs said Arab for ethnicity. And for Jews, it said Palestinian, because memo, we are the natives of Palestine. That's what there is to that. And so, not to get too political, but on a spiritual sense, We are the natives. There is no such ethnicity. There's never been a flag, a Palestinian flag. There was never an army. There never was a statehood. No Muslim country ever designated before 1948 Jerusalem to be their capital. They only exist because we exist. It's just the Satan uses them to oppose us. So that should be clear for anybody who's a thinking person, who has any notion of history. All right, continuing on. Verse Lamed Aleph, which is actually, before I continue, I just want to point out, Kimchi comments that the reason for the feast was to reestablish the agreement between them, like that they have an alliance. Yeah, so when you sit down and have a meal with somebody, certainly something happens. Okay, verse 31. Vayashkimu vaboker vayishaveu ish leachiv. So they rose up early. This is what this verb means, to rise up early. They rose up early, vaboker, that's in the morning. So you see the footprint from ha. See, there's the patach and the dagesh forte, or dagesh chazak, however you learn that, the strong dagesh in the bait. So that shows us that there used to be a ha there, right? So ha boker means the morning, but the hay disappears, but he leaves his footprint. So if you're a bit of a language detective, you can see it there. So in the morning, vayishaveu ish leachiv, and ish leachiv, this is idiomatic. Literally, it means a man to his brother. But when you see this, it means like one another, right? To one another. So they each swore to one another, swore an oath to one another. Okay? This is a nifal verb. That means that there's a nun here for the nifal binyan, and the nun has assimilated into the sheen. So in ancient times, it might have been vayin shava'u, but that nun was just too hard to say, and it was easier to say vayish shava'u, right? Just like our illegal example we give. Vaishalachem Yitzchak vayelechu me'ito b'shalom. So, Yitzchak, this is the subject of this verb, okay? And the object of the verb, if you look at the end, it's quite clearly aim. It's the pronominal suffix, right? Which is them. So, shalach, this is in the PL, you see the strong dagesh in the middle, so that means to send out, right? Not just to send, but to send out. So, Yitzchak sent them out, vayelechu, and they went, me'ito, from with him. And it's mei with itzeri because Aleph can't take the dagesh from the word mean, right? The nun tries to double that letter. It can't double an Aleph because you can't double that sound. And so instead, the short Hirik that was under the mem lengthens to the long vowel serei. Beshalom, in peace. He sent them out from with him in peace. Oh, and they went from with him in peace. Okay, verse Lamed Beit, that's 32. Vayihi bayom hahu, and it was on that day, literally in the day, that one. Remember, who, it does mean he, but that's only because day, yom, is masculine, right? So this is the demonstrative adjective, right? And remember, you say noun and then adjective, right? And it must agree in number, right? This is yom, not yamin, so it's who, not ham, and or hema, either one. It must agree in gender. Yom is masculine, so we use who. We didn't say he. He would be if it was feminine, right? And in definitiveness, right? So it's ba yom. So you can see the definite article shows his footprint, his tracks. Hey was there. Just like up in here, we have the same footprint happening down here. So that's why you have to say hahu. In the day, that one. Vayavo'u avdei Yitzchak v'yagidu lo al odot habe'er asher chafaru. Okay, there's our end of the clause marker there. You should be used to that by now. Vayavo'u avdei Yitzchak. So here's the subject, the avdei Yitzchak. Sorry about that poorly drawn circle. That's the subject of this verb. Okay, yavo'u means they will come, they will arrive, but it's got the vav conversive, so the time swaps. And they came. Who came? The avdei Yitzchak. So, or then, the servants of Yitzchak came. Vayagidu lo, And they told him, this is from the verb nagad. It might be hard to recognize because the noon, this is a pei noon verb. It has assimilated into the gimel. That's why there's a strong dagash there, showing that, hey, there used to be a noon here. In ancient times, this probably was vayan gidu. And it was, over time, it just became easy to say vayag gidu, right? And today, we just pronounce it as one gimel, even though there are, in fact, two there. Nagad is to relate. This is where we get the word Haggadah on Pesach, the telling, right? We go through the story of the Pesach in the Haggadah. It's a telling of it, right? So Vayagidu is from Nagad. So Yagidu by itself means they will tell, but it's vav consecutive, vav conversive, so it becomes and they told. So this is the servants, are still the subject. Lo, to him. Al adot, concerning the thing of Habe'er, the well, Asher Chafaru, which they dug. Vayomru lo matzanu mayim. And they said to him, we found mayim, water. That's great. It's the same day. Kimchi goes on to point out that this is even before the Philistines had departed. Elohim had arranged it such that the Philistines would notice how Matzliach, how successful he had become, and they would have fear of Yitzchak. So they wouldn't even consider going back on their promises. You see? They had noticed how when Abraham was there, things were going well. When they came into the land afterwards, things were not going well. Another commentator, I don't remember who it was. Sorry, I like to give credit, but I can't always remember. Mentions that the Mea She'arim, that it was this way also when Abraham was there. But when he departed, when they took over the land, it was not that way. They were lucky if they even got, Achad Sha'ar, And then when they noticed when Yitzchak came into the land, again, Mea Sha'arim, wonderful produce happening. And so this also caused them to fear Yitzchak, to realize that he truly was, that God noticed him, and that he watched him. Okay, let's continue on with verse Lamed Gimel, that's 33. Vaikra ota Shiva. So he called it, in its feminine, because we're talking about the Be'er, there's a pronominal suffix, Shiva, 7. Al-Ken Shem Ha'ir Be'er Sheva Ad Hayom Hazeh. Al-Ken is just something idiomatic you have to learn. Don't translate each of these words by themselves or it'll just be weird. Al, on top of or concerning, Ken, meaning thus, right, or such. So Al-Ken usually means something like therefore. Therefore, like if for those of you who have studied mathematics, it's like this symbol. Therefore, Shem Ha'ir Be'er Sheva. So we have a construct chain here. Shem Ha'ir. Okay. So Ha'ir is the word that's in the absolute. And what is that, folks? It's definite, right? It's definite. So since the word that's in the absolute is definite, the whole chain is definite. So we have to put a the on all of the words in the chain. So therefore, the shame, the name, and then of, because it's in construct, the city. And then to make things make sense in English, we usually have to insert is, right? Be'er Sheva. And this city still exists in Israel today. We still have Be'er Sheva, right? You might see this sometimes as Be'er Shava, and you might be wondering, is that the same place? It's the same place. If you see it as Be'er Shava, it just means that this word is in pause, either with a suluk or with an etnachta, or atnach, however you like to call it, right? The wishbone-looking one, which I did not draw well. So this guy here, this one here, yeah? Sometimes it just looks like an upside of a triangle. And when it's in pause, the segol lengthens to a kametz, so it becomes Shava instead of Sheva. Same place. Ad Hayom Hazeh. Ad is until Hayom Hazeh, this day, and that's actually totally true. Absolutely true. That it sure is called Shava to this day. Okay, continuing. Then we have the Samach. This is just showing that there's a space in the Torah scroll there, or at least there should be. The Samachs have been preserved according to the Masorah, and I'd have to look. Sometimes the Samach marks the end of the 3-year reading instead of the 1-year reading. I don't like the name, but it's known as the Palestinian cycle, right? Because we have the Jerusalem Talmud, right? Or sometimes called the Palestinian Talmud, right? Meaning it was in the land of Palestine. Because the land took on this name after the Romans gave it that name to basically tick us off, right? All right. Verse Lamed Dalet, that's 34. Vayhi Esau. I say Esau because this used to be a W sound, right? I like to call people's names by how they actually were called back in the day, right? So you might say, but I learned it's a Vav. Yes, yes. When we read from the Torah, we'll usually use the modern pronunciation. We'll say Esav, right? Because for the last many centuries, the Vav has been a V. But I like to say the names the way they were. It's Adam and Chawa, not Adam and Chava, right? Her name was Chawa. It's a name. So let's say the names how they were. So Esau was his name. So Vahi Esau ben Arba'im Shana Vayikach Isha et Yehudit Bat Be'eri Hachiti. And I should have said Yehudith, right? Because this, in ancient Hebrew, again, it's a name. A tav, you don't have to know this, it's okay, but just in case you're wondering, hey, why is Yirmeyah doing this? A tav without a dagesh, notice there's no dagesh inside, used to be a th sound. Th, okay? So, now, Esau is what this means. Yehi means will be. The Vav is a Vav conversive, so it swaps the time. So now Esau was Ben Arba'im Shana. This means literally the son of 40 year. Okay, so that's how you say he was 40 years old. Vayikach, when he took, so this is Lakach, the Lamed, that's what that strong Dagesh in the Kuf is showing us. Some call it Kof, some call it Kuf. Don't get mad at me if I use a name for it that your tradition doesn't call it. Ishai took a woman at Yehudith. Her name was Yehudith. He took Yehudith. Bat Be'eri Hachiti, the daughter of Be'eri the Hittite. Be'et Basamath. Basamath. I need to stick to my my own way there. Again, we have a tav without a dagesh, so th. Basamath, bat Elon Hachiti, and also Basamath, the daughter of Elon the Hittite. So he took two wives from two different Hittite guys. And we have verse Lamed He, which is 35. Vatihyena morat ruach leYitzchak uleRivka, because they were tzaddikim, and it became a bitter spirit to Yitzchak and to Rivka, right? Because they know that the Hittites are not beloved by Abraham, but yet Esau, in his wickedness, he went to the bad side. He doesn't care. Just like he spurned the birthright. In other words, remember my teaching on the first Aliyah, he didn't care to be the son who got to make sacrifices to Hashem, because it was the firstborn, the Bechor, who had the right to make the sacrifices. That's why it's such a big deal that Esau was willing to sell his birthright. Verse 35, Lamed He. Vatihyena morat ruach, and there was a bitter spirit, leYitzchak to Yitzchak, uleRivka to Rivka. All right, now we have a giant Kaf Zion. This shows us that we are on chapter 27. And so I don't bother to write the Aleph here for the verse because that should be clear. This is usually how, different texts have different pointing, but those that put the Hebrew verses in chapters, a lot of times they won't do that. Sometimes they'll have a little Aleph, sometimes not, right? It's kind of obvious. You should realize you're starting a new chapter. Clearly the first verse is Aleph. Okay, Vayhiki Zakein Yitzchak, Vatichena Einav Nevreot, Lekra et Esau, Beno Hagadol, Vayomer Elav, Beni, Vayomer Elav, Hineni. All right. So we continue on. So it was that Yitzhak grew old. Zakein. It's a stative verb. Vatichyeina einav, and his eyes. All right. This is kind of a rare word. It took me a second to remember the root. This is kaha, is actually the root, which means to grow dark. to be darkened, to grow dim, something like this. It's not so easy to recognize because the root itself, it's got kaf, and then it's hey hey. You don't see that too often, right? A double hey like that. Yeah, and there's, in the PL, it can actually even mean like to lose color, to become without color, which is really what happens with blind people, right? I mean, a lot of times, depending on what's causing their blindness, you'll see the colorlessness to the eyes. So his eyes became colorless; they became darkened, merot, from seeing, right? So meaning he couldn't see so much. Vayikra et Esav. And he summoned Esau, Beno, his son, Hagadol, the bigger one. Vayomer, he said, Elav to him, Beni, my son. Vayomer Elav, and he said to him, Hineni, here am I, which is really the spirit that a son should answer to a father. It should be in the spirit of Hineni, the spirit of here am I. And of course, there's a multitude of drashot that could be written just on that one answer, like Abraham Avinu answered when he was taken up to the mountain, when he was to be called to Mount Moriah to sacrifice his son, like we see in the Akedah. Okay, verse 8, verse 2. Vayomer hinena zakanti. And he said, look now, I have grown old. Lo yadati yom moti, I do not know yom moti. So here we have a construct chain. Yom moti. So mot means death from mavet. Actually, in the absolute, it would be mavet, right? But when you put a suffix on it, it becomes mot. So moti, my death. Okay. So it's not anybody's death; it's my death. So that means it's definite, which means the whole chain is definite. So you have to put the in your translation, right? I do not know lo yadati, the day of my death. And this, you might be saying, why does it say lo yadati? Like I did not know, like I did not know past tense, right? Perfect. This is just how verbs of knowledge are expressed in Tanachit, right? So in context, we understand he's saying, I don't know now, right? The idea usually with verbs of knowledge are that if you didn't know before, you still don't know now, unless something has transpired, okay? So you wouldn't say ani lo yodea, like in modern Hebrew, you'd say it like this, right? But Tanachit doesn't function that way, okay? So Gimel, ve'ata sana chaylecha telyecha v'kashtecha. Okay. So now sa, you might not recognize what this is from. The verb is nasa, nasa. So it's a pei nun verb, meaning the first position of the verb has a nun there. And with pei nun verbs, the nun disappears a lot of times. So sa is an imperative; it's a command form. And in pei nun verbs, it falls away. Okay. So, like if I want to tell a man, give me, so natan is give, I would say tain li, give me, if I'm commanding, right? So in this case, nasa also begins with the noon, and it's just sana. Take up now, chelecha. So this is from kaleh, like your instruments, your instruments of whatever. It can be a plate, it can be, an instrument of warfare, your instruments. And then he clarifies what instruments. Telyecha, your quiver, vekashtecha. Keshet is a segelet, which means bow. So if I wanted to say your king, melech, which is a segelet, I would say malkah. Right? So similarly, keshet, which is bow. Same thing for rainbow. The bow in the sky, right, is also keshet. Becomes kashtecha. In this case, kashtecha, the second schwa lengthens to a segol. Just like a segol lengthens to a kametz in pause, a schwa, vocal schwa lengthens to segol. So even though segol is only a short vowel, it's still longer than a schwa, which is a non-vowel. V'tzei hasadeh v'tzudali saida. Okay, this is very interesting. So, say, this is from yatsa. The first letter is a yod in this, so it's go out. So it's imperative form. It's a pei yod verb. The yod will disappear also in this case. So go out, hasadeh, into the field, or towards the field, literally. V'tzudali, and hunt for me, saida, game. Right? Although some argue that this word said actually means venison specifically. So I'm not sure about that, if it should be just game or venison. So if you care, you can dig dig for this. So there's some question, like, though, Saeed means game. So what is the deal with Saida? Like, why do we have this extra hay here at the end? Right? You don't go towards game, right? It's not hey locative, or at least you wouldn't think it is. And so there's a little bit of commentary on this. Kizkuni says the extra hay stands for 5, right? In numerology, in gematria, if you count Aleph, Beit, Gimel, Dalet, Hey is the 5th letter in the Aleph, Beit. And he says that Yitzchak was concerned about the 5 different possibilities of Esau's ritual slaughtering of an animal might fail to be kosher, right? And so there's some talk that that's the hay. He's worried about that, and he's signaling that he wants to make sure that it's done properly, that it's kosher. Yep. Kimchi comments that it's written with a hay, but it should be read without it, like Saeed, right? And that's actually hinted to us by the Masoretes. Notice there's no vowel underneath the Dalet. Right? So even though I read it originally Saida, just because the hey is a vowel letter, we usually read a hey. We usually read it as an ah at the end, even before there were nikudot, before there were vowel pointings. Kimchi's saying you shouldn't read it that way. That and he goes on to say that there's a midrash that's all about this. So you can look if you want to learn more about the midrash. All right. Continuing to verse Dalet. I'm trying to keep things faster today. Sorry if I'm lingering too much. Let's keep going. Verse Dalet. Va'aseh mat amim ka'asher havti vehavia li ve'ochela. Okay? And so go ahead and aseli, make for me, do for me, mat amim. So this is after you've hunted it. Like these are like dainties, delights. The root of this word is ta'am. Ta'am. So like in Hebrew, if someone gives you something tasty, you can say, ta'amli. It's tasty to me, right? It's like pleasing to me. And so mat amim, these are like dainties, delights, like delicacies, something like that. Yeah? Ka'asher ahavti, according to how I love. And you'll notice with love, it's also in the perfect. Just like we saw yadati. So even though this is not really a verb of knowledge, it's still behaving similarly. I loved it before, it's assumed that I still love it, right? Notice it's not kasher ani ohev, like you'd say in modern Hebrew. So if you study modern Hebrew and you're just getting into Tanachit, this is one of the differences. Vehavi ali. So the root is ba, or bo, like we say Baruch haba b'shem Adonai, right? This is he who comes in the name of Hashem. There is a yod inserted there before the 3rd root letter. So this is to cause to come, which is to bring, and bring li to me, the ochela, that I might eat. Ba'avur tevarechecha nafshi beterem amut. Okay, ba'avur is just a phrase you need to learn. It's like so that. It's like, for those of you who have studied biblical Greek, it serves oftentimes in the Septuagint the function of de, like just connecting the ideas. So that tevarechecha might bless you. The pronominal suffix cha is you. The verb is barech. Okay, and it's feminine, 3rd person with the tav here, the imperfect. So what's the subject? It's nafshi, my nefesh. Right, my nefesh is the subject, and nefesh is feminine. That's why the verb is feminine. So that my soul might bless cha, you. Beterem means before, amut, I will die. Okay, so that's, yeah. Okay, so let's jump on then to verse 5. Rivka shoma'at bedaber Yitzchak el Esav beno. Now Rivka shoma'at, she was listening. This is active participle, feminine. The tav clues us off that it's feminine. Some feminine active participles end in hey, and some end in tav. You could also say shome'ah with a hey at the end. It also occurs this way. Bedaber, when Yitzchak was speaking. A beit, in this case, means when it's in front of an active participle. When Yitzchak was speaking, El Esau, unto Esau, Beno, his son. And it's interesting that the text here says his son. It doesn't say their son. And maybe that's worth some extra digging if you want to have your own Devar Torah about it. But I think there's definitely something there that Rivka was not considering him, their son. but instead it's coming off as Beno, his son, Yitzchak's son. Now remember, she's the one who had the revelation from Hashem that the older would serve the younger, right? So that Yaakov is the one who is deserving to carry on the family name. He's the one who's deserving to have the rights of the firstborn. And remember, the right of the firstborn is to make the offerings before Hashem. Before the Levitical code was given, the firstborn of the family, he was the one who would make the offerings. That's why it's such a cruddy thing that Esau did to sell the birthright, right? It's so lame, and this is why Yaakov was even testing him to see if he would sell his birthright for some porridge, because it's not just selling his right for stuff, right? Remember, we see that Yitzchak wasn't freely giving lots of stuff to his children, right? Yaakov, when he goes off to get a wife, he's later on, when Esau wants to kill him, we'll see that he has to work for Lavan. He doesn't have a lot of loot with him, right? Even though there's only 2 sons to Yitzchak, nevertheless, that is kept in the family holdings. That is kept in the livestock, etc. They're not just spending their cash freely. They understand the wisdom of locking it up in profit-producing endeavors. And so it's not really so much about the firstborn, which is the right of the firstborn, which is why Esau didn't care so much about it. It's really about who gets to be the one to stand before Hashem. And Esau didn't care to be the one to stand before Hashem. Yaakov did. That's why this further proof that Yaakov was, as the text tells us, an Ish Tam, a blameless man. Okay, verse Hey, okay, we're done with that. Okay, let's continue on to verse Shesh, verse Vav. V'rivka amara el Yaakov benah le'emor. Then Rivka said to Yaakov, her son, knows benah, the aspirated hey is the pronominal suffix for her. Lemor saying, so the previous one, Beno, was whom? Esau. But Benah was Yaakov. Hine hey, shamati et avicha, medaber, el Esau achicha le'emor. Behold, or look, I heard your father saying to Esau, your brother, saying, okay, so continue on to verse Sheva. Okay. Havia li tzayid ve'aseh li mat'amim ve'ochela. Bring for me game or venison, depending on how you interpret that word, and make for me dainties, delights, tasty things, so that I should eat. Va'avarechecha lifnei Adonai lifnei moti. So that I will bless. Here it's interesting, Cha is spelled differently, right? It's a different way to spell Cha. It still means you. You'll see it this way, even in Psalms. Sometimes it's this way, unless it's using sometimes you'll see it as Chi, even which is a very different dialectal ending. Lifnei Adonai, before, or like in the presence of Adonai, before I die. Okay, so notice 2 different uses of lifnei here. Okay. Now Rashi understands this lifnei Hashem to be with Hashem's approval, right? Like by His approval. We say that like in His face, in the presence of Hashem. Right. Going on to verse 8. This is verse 8. The atal beveni shema bekoli. So now, my son, obey me, is how you translate this. It is a Hebrew idiom to say shema bekol. Okay? Shema, literally listen or hear in voice. Okay? The way to translate this is obey. When you see this, it's obey. So obey, and then since it's koli, my voice, that's obey me. So she's commanding her son now. This is important to remember before you hear the goyim saying that he's a liar, he's a cheat, etc. He tricked his father, blah, blah, blah. His mother is commanding him. Lasher ani mitzaveh, mitzavah, she's feminine. Otach. So according to how I am commanding you. So just in case you didn't understand that Shema B'Koli means obey me, she uses the word mitzvah, which is a feminine form, active participle form. I am commanding otach you. In case you're wondering why is it not otacha, that's because it's in pause. The suluk here changes the spelling. Okay, so it's basically like v'atavani shema b'koli v'asher ani mitzvah otach. Right? They originally had some extra emphasis just on the word I am commanding you. All right. Continuing on, verse tet. Lech na el hatzon v'kach li misham shnei gedaye izim tovim. Okay. Lech, this is from halach or yalach, whichever one you want to pretend it is. They're both the same verb. And whether it's pei hey or yod, pei yod, it falls away. So go now to the flock. This is a sheep flock, right? V'kach, this is the imperative form of lakach. The lamed falls away, and we're left with the kof, kuf, chet. Take from me, misham from there, shnei gedaye izim. 2 kids of he-goats, hairy he-goats, tovim, good ones. Ve'e'aseh otam mat'amim le'avicha kasher ahev. So that I might make them into delicacies, dainties, tasty things, whatever. Ta'am from the root tasty, le'avicha, for your father, kasher ahev, according to how he loves. Okay? Okay, verse Yod, which is 10. Veheveta le'avicha ve'achal. Then you will bring them. Notice it's hefil, the hay at the beginning. Ba, we know, ba is to come. Hefil means to cause to come, which is wordy in English, where we just say bring. Then you will bring le'avicha, to your father, the achal, that he will eat, and he will eat. Ba'avu asher yevarechecha lifnei moto. Remember, this is like so that. Again, it's like the Greek de. So that, it's just connecting the thoughts. Asher, when yevarechecha, or so he will bless cha, you, lifnei moto, before mot nya, before his death. Okay. Verse Yod Aleph, that's 11. Vayomer Yaakov el Rivka imo, but Yaakov said unto Rivka, his mother, Hein, Esa achi ish sa'ir ve'anochi ish chalak. Look, Esau, my brother, is a hairy man. He's ish sa'ir, pardon me. But I am ish chalak, a smooth man. Verse Yod Beit. Ulai yimusheni avi v'haiti ve'enav kim ta'ate'ah v'heveti alai kalala v'lo v'acha. Ulai means perhaps, if you haven't learned that word before. It's perhaps yimeshuli. So this word you probably haven't learned. It's not that often in the Bible. It's from mashash, right? And so that's where it's a pu'al form from mashash. And so it's like to feel, to touch, to inspect tactily. Who? Ni, right? To feel me. Who? Avi, my father. That's the subject. Perhaps my father will feel me, v'haiti, and I will become in his eyes. Right? So you could say that like in his sight, in his eyes. It means a lot the same as it does in English. And the next word, this is kind of hard to pick apart. Kim ta'ate'ah. Okay? So it's a participle. The mem gives it away. But the verb is actually ta'ah. Ta'ah. So this is the equivalent of a PL from ta'ah. And ta'ah is like, I said like TL functionally, but it's really a very rare form called peel pel, which you can see the way peel pel. So again, it's from pa'al, right? So you can see peel pel. So if it's ta'ah, if the tav is from the p in pa'al, and the ayin, right, is from the ayin, and the ayin is from the lamed, so you can see how they repeat peel pel. So the tav ayin, and then the tav ayin again. Anyway, it functions like a PL. It's an intensive form, right? It means like to make fun of someone, to mock them, right? Like you're playing a dirty trick on them, you're playing a dirty game, okay? So Haiti means I became. The Vav swaps the time, it means then I will become in his eyes. Kaf is like. Why is there here? Because you can't have two schwas in a row at the beginning of the word. So even though with inseparable prepositions we start with a schwa, you already have a schwa. It's not allowed. So instead, the non-vowel lengthens to the shortest vowel. Pardon me, the non-vowel schwa lengthens to the shortest vowel chirik. I got ahead of the game there, meaning like or as, and then one who mocks, one who makes fun, one who does a dirty trick. Veheveti alai, and there will come upon me kalala, a curse, velo bracha, and not a bracha. All right, continuing on with verse Yod Gimel, which is 13. We have Vatomer lo imo alai kelatcha beni. Then she said to him, who's the she? Imo, right? That's ain for mother. O is her, his. His mother said to him, Alai kelatcha beni, upon me your curse, my son. Okay? And the Rashbam says that what she's trying to say here is that she's expressing she has such betachon, such confidence. Right? We've talked about betachon before, that the more emunah you have, not the more, but the longer the period of unbroken emunah, faith that you have, the more your gas tank is filled up with betachon, your reserves of betachon, right? Just like when one sins, they have more avon, guilt, right? Or a city accrues guilt. It's like a substance in the spiritual realm that's a stinky substance that goes up to Hashem and he sees it, right? The outcry goes up. That's why he wanted to destroy Saddam and Amorah, because of all the avon going up, right? But the opposite is the more emunah a person has, again, not more, but the time period. It's like the tracing, right? Like if you look at the tracing of a flat shape in 3D space over time, it becomes a 3D shape, right? Like a circle can become a sphere, right? If it's growing as the time goes. So emunah can become betachon. It stores up betachon, and so the Rashbam says that she's really saying, I know nobody's going to get cursed because it's true what Hashem showed me in his dream. And so because of that, there will be no curse. Because of that, it will all come to pass as he showed me, because Hashem showed me that the older will serve the younger, right? And this is, of course, the prophecy that's true and that we see coming down the line, and indeed it will happen. Okay, let me just continue now. Ach shema bekoli velech kach li. And so this is, it just really gets really more and more difficult for people to start calling Yaakov, our ancestor, a cheat, or he's just, or a usurper, or whatever these things that people say. And Kimchi even comments that this whole thing where she says, Alai kalat techa b'ni, she's saying it because I am the one who's commanding you, right? And so if anything bad happens, the boss is the one who gets in trouble, right? You're a soldier, you're doing what I say, I'm the boss, right? So if you're going to say anyone's a cheat and a liar, you should say it's his mother, Rivka. Which of course she's not. She's honoring Hashem. She's honoring the vision that he gave her. She knew it was Ruach HaKodesh that visited her and gave her this truth. And she cannot allow wicked Esau, who didn't care about bringing offerings to Hashem. He didn't care. He wanted a bowl of beans instead. All right? So she's actually a tzedeket. And she's willing to put it all on the line for what she knows is true. And her son has to do this thing to make things right. Verse Yod Dalet 14. Vayelech vayikach vayaveh le'imo. So he went and he took and he brought to his mother. Vata'as imo mat'amim ka'asher ahev aviv. So this is asa, is the verb, hard to recognize, lamed hey, asa. So his mother took, pardon me, she made, asa is to do or to make, she made mat'amim, delicacies, tasty things, dainties, kasher, according to how ahev aviv, his father, ahev, loved. And this is something that's You notice it's an active participle, right? Those who study modern Hebrew, they think this means present, but really the active participle, it doesn't capture time at all. It's more like what we would call a verbal adjective, right? It just, or like a gerund in English, right? It just agrees with um, a noun rather. So this is actually modifying aviv, right? It's a verbal adjective modifying the state of aviv. His father, one loving, is really more what it's saying. But to make things sound good in English, we just make it agree with whatever time is already established in the sentence. And so since we have vayelech, the Vav conversive, puts it in past tense, so then we say, your father loved, right? But with verbs of knowledge and loving and all this stuff, it makes more sense to say he loves, right? That's why it's coming across that way. Not because this is a present tense verb. There's really no such thing. Okay. Vav, which is 9 plus 6, guarding the divine name, 15. Verse 15 says, Vatikach Rivka et bigdei Esau benah hagadol hachamudot asher ita ba'bayit. Okay. Lots happening there. Okay, so let's look. Vatikach, this is lakach, right? Which you might not have noticed. The lamed is hiding in the kuf. Okay, and so Rivka took et the definite direct object marker. What did she take? Bigdei Esau. So here we have a nice construct chain. Bigdei is from beged. Beged is a segelet, right? Beged means clothing or garment, right? So Esau is a proper noun, so he's definite, it's a name. So that makes the whole thing definite. You have to say the. She took the clothings, or the clothes, the garments of Esau, Benah, her son. Which one? Hagadol. So this is interesting. So the noun is Benah, her son. And since it's definite, the adjective that follows also has to be definite. That's why it's Hagadol, you see? Benah, Hagadol. Her son, the older one, right? Her older son, you could just say like that in English. Hachamudot asher ita babayit. Okay, hachamudot. This is kind of interesting word. The Muslims try to use this word to say that, like Muhammad, that he is actually prophesied in the Bible, because you have this root showing up sometimes. This chamad. Chamad just means like desirable, right? Of course, it's this silly way. Prophecy doesn't work this way. You can't just say because the root exists somewhere that's saying, oh, see, Muhammad's in there. No, it doesn't say Muhammad. It says ha-chamudot, right? This is agreeing back with clothing, right? It means like, desired, like treasured, like precious, right? So, asher ita, which were with her, babai, in the house. But talbesh et Yaakov bena hakatan. And she, lavash means to dress, and she dressed Yaakov, her son. Which one? Hakatan, the younger. Okay, verse Tet Zayin. Tet Zayin is actually 16, verse 16, because it's 9 plus 7. Ve'et orot gedaye ha'izim hilbisha al yadav. And this is interesting how the text phrases it. We get another object here. We're starting with the object, right? There's et, the definite object marker. So literally it says, and hides. Here we have a nice construct chain. This is kind of a long one. There's 3 words. Right? Okay. Orot means hides, like skins. Gidiye is construct form of kids. Ha'izim of hairy he-goats, right? And so the last word in the absolute has ha, so the whole chain has the hides of the kids of the goats. Hilbisha, she dressed al yadav, upon his hands, like she, literally it says she dressed his arms, right? The al chelkat tzav agav, and on the smooth part of his neck, like the nape, right? Verse Yod Zayin. Yod Zayin, of course, being 10 plus 7, which is 17. Vatiten et hamat amim ve'et halechem asher asata beyad Yaakov benah. So T10 might be hard for you to recognize. This is the imperfect form, imperfect form, third person feminine singular of Natan. So the Peinun, the Nun went inside the Tav. Right? It's not a PL form, okay? But T10, and she gave, it can mean gave her to set, to place. And she gave the dainties and the bread, which asata, this is from asa, the feminine form, third person feminine perfect, which she made. Where did she set them? Where did she give them? Biyad Yaakov bema. So probably set or gave, either works, into the hand of Yaakov. This is the construct form here. Her son. Okay. Verse Yod Chet. Vayavo el avi vayomer avi. Then he came to his father and he said, my father. Vayomer, and he said, Hineni, here am I. Miatabani, who are you, my son? This is where it gets really interesting. Yod Tet 19. Vayomer Yaakov el aviv Anochi Esa bechorecha asiti kasher dibarta elai. Okay, so look at this. The Ta'amim are saying, then Yaakov said unto his father, it is I. Pardon me, is it I? It is I. So this just says, the Ta'amim shows how he's answering. He says, it is I. And now he says, Esau bechorecha. Esau is your firstborn. Look at that. The Masorah, the tradition through the Ta'amim, how we are to read this with these accents, it is to be read this way. He answers, truthfully, it is I. Esau is your firstborn. You don't get this in English translations. You don't get this in Russian translations. You don't get this in German translations or any of the other translations of the Goyim. Because they don't respect the Masorah. They can't help it. They don't see the usefulness, the value, and the tradition. Other than that, it brought us the entire Hebrew Bible. The Masorah includes the vowel markers. Every Christian translation has these vowel markers. When they look at the Hebrew text, they usually lean on the Biblia Hebraica Stuttgartensia, which is the critical text of the Hebrew Bible, based on the Westminster Leningrad Codex, right? Which is a Jewish Hebrew codex of the Bible. Jewish translations lean on this also, or they lean on the Aleppo Codex, which most of the Torah was lost in a fire, which was caused, imagine it's in a Muslim country, in Syria, when it happened. Okay, so imagine who burned the synagogue down and damaged this priceless Aleppo Codex. But anyway, they're both pretty much the same. And for us, the Christians, in their translations, they base on the same Hebrew with the same vowel markers and the same vowel signs. The vowel signs are just as much tradition as the Ta'amim are. But the Ta'amim tell the story slightly differently. He says, he answers his father and he says, who? Miatabani, he says, it is I. And by the way, Esau is your firstborn. Even though he's commanded by his mother to deceive his father, he's such a tzaddik, such a righteous, non-liar, non-cheater, pious student who loved to study intense, who is approved by Hashem so much so that Hashem shows the mother the vision that the older will serve the younger. Because the younger is the one who should get the Bechor. He's the one I want to stand before me making offerings, not this wicked Esau, who's a hunter, who doesn't care about the animal suffering, etc., etc., etc. Instead, it's Yaakov. And even so, he tries to not deceive his father. Not like the Goyim say in their traditions, that he's just waiting to usurp, to trick his brother. He cared that a righteous man should be the one who stands before Hashem making the offerings. That's why he wanted the birthright. He saw his brothers out hunting, playing games, not studying, not intense, not sitting intense. Right? He doesn't care about the school of Aver. Right? He doesn't care about the teachings of grandfather Abraham, who was still alive then, in those times as he was growing up. So then he goes on to say, he goes on to say, Asiti, okay, so Esau is your firstborn. I have made, according to how you said, a lie unto me. And it gets kind of interesting here. I have done according to how you have said to me. You have, and now this is interpreted by various Chazal to mean like times past you've said to me, I paid attention to your teachings. He's not saying I've made the food. He's saying in my life the important things. Kasher dibate elai, that you've taught me, that you've spoken to me. Diber is a very, it's a harder way than saying amarta, right? You spoke to me. We call the Ten Commandments the Aseret Debarot, right? The 10 really things related to Debar that were spoken in a level of harshness greater than an imra, than an utterance, right? So when he says, I've done according to what you've spoken to me, he's not saying that I went and killed the game that I hunted. He's saying instead that I have led the life as you have taught me, the traditions that you have passed down from Abraham. Kumna, kumna, shiva ve'ochla, pardon me, shiva ve'achla mitzedi ba'avur tevarechani nafshecha. Arise now, shiva. So shiva here, this is a little bit interesting. What is happening with shiva? So the root from this word shiva, it might be a little bit hard to recognize, but it's actually yashav, right? So there's actually a yod. It's a peyod verb, and so that has disappeared. So get up now, shiva. So get up, please. Really, the not is a please. Arise, please. And now yashav, and sit, right? Sit, please. V'achala, and eat. So like arise and go to the table, yeah? Arise and go to the place where we're going to eat at. Mitzedi, from my game. Ba'avor, so that tevarachani, you might bless me. Pardon me, not you might bless, but might bless me. Who? Nafshecha, your soul. It's not nafshecha because it's a saluk, it's in pause, so the vocal schwa lengthens to the short vowel. Sigol. All right, I hope you got that, Rabotai. The importance of the ta'amin in capturing this tradition. Just like the vowels are captured in the tradition, so are the accent marks, and they tell a different story than what we are told by the Goyish traditions about our ancestor being. And please, if you can do it in a polite way, if you hear someone from a Christian tradition talking about Esau was a thief and a stealer and all this stuff, just please try to correct them. It's not the case. He tried to resist as much as he could, but he could not allow Esau to be the one to bring the offerings when he didn't even care about it in the first place, and it's not what Hashem wanted. All right, verse Kaf, verse 20. Vayomer Yitzchak el beno mazeh micharta limso beni. And Yitzchak said unto Beno, his son, Mazeh, what is this? Micharta, you have hurried up, limso, to find Beni, my son. Vayomer ki hikra Adonai Elohecha lefanai. Quite interesting. And he said, because happened Adonai, your God, before me. Now, Kimchi interprets this to mean like your God gave me fortune, right? Like, in other words, lema'an sechutcha, because of your merit, your sechut, or your sechus in Yiddish, since it was on your behalf, it came to happen, right? Like, not because of my own merit, but because of your own. He continues to act humbling here. Or, Abarbanel interprets it differently. He's saying, because my mother commanded me to do this, Yitzhak, Kanyeshna, of course, he understood that it was Esau saying he had had good luck hunting. Nevertheless, sorry for my cough. Continuing on with verse Kaf Aleph. Vayomer Yitzchak el Yaakov. So Yitzhak said unto Yaakov, pardon me, Gesha na, draw near, please, the amushecha, that I might touch you, Beni, my son. Ha'ata ze beni Esa imlo, are you really this one, my son, Esa, or not? Verse Kaf Beit. Vayigash Yaakov el Yitzchak aviv vayimushehu. By the way, if it's too fast, You can slow down on YouTube the speed of playback, and it won't distort the voices. It's a nice feature. So you can use this if you think it's too fast for you, my reading. I got a bit of a dry throat, so I'm kind of hurrying through it now. So this is a Peinun verb, nagash, right? So Yaakov, nagash, he drew near El Yitzhak, also up here, this is Peinun on Gasha, to Yitzhak, Aviv, his father, by Moshehu, and he touched him. He felt him. He like groped at him, kind of. I mean, Vayomer hakol kol Yaakov, v'hayadayim yedei Esau. He said the voice is the voice of Yaakov, but the hands are the hands of Esau. Verse Kaf Gimel 23. V'lo hikiro ki hayu yadav kidei Esau achiv se'irot v'yevarechehu. But he did not recognize, this is from Nakio, to recognize. He did not recognize. Interesting enough, it can also mean to disguise, right? He did not recognize, him. Ki hayu yedai, because his hands, they were ke, like yedei Esau, construct, the hands of Esau. Achiv, his brother. Se'irot, hairy. So he blessed him. Verse Kaf, Dalet, 24. Vayomer, Taze beni Esau. Vayomer ani. Then he said, you are this one, my son Esau. And he said, I. Notice he didn't say, I'm Esau. He's still trying to resist. He's holding on. He's trying to do as little fibbing, as little deception as possible. Rashi points out, he didn't say Esau ani. He did not say I am Esau. He just said I. Okay. Let's continue on to verse Kaf Hey 25. Vayomer hagisha li ve'ochela meitzeid b'ni lema'an tevarechecha nafshi. So he said, draw near to me that I may eat from the venison or from the game, my son, so that my soul, that's the subject, may bless cha, may bless you. Vayegesh lo, vayochal, vayavei lo yayin vayesht. So he drew near to him, and he ate, and he brought to him yayin, wine, vayesht, and he drank. Okay, verse Kaf Vav 26. Vayomer elav Yitzchak Aviv. Then Yitzchak said unto him, Yitzchak his father said unto him, Geshana ushikali beni. Approach now, ushikali beni. So what is shakah? What is up with shakah there? So shakah is from the root, actually, noon sheen kaf. So it's a pay noon verb. So you're missing, actually, the noon here. It disappeared, like we say, in command forms, the noon will drop away. So nashak, you probably recognize. It's to kiss, right? Ugaritic even has a word like this, nashak. And so he's like, come near to me and kiss me, my son. Continuing to verse Kaf Zion 27. Vayigash vayishak lo. So he approached and he kissed him. Vayarach et reach begadav, and he smelled the aroma of his clothing. From beged begadav, his clothes. Vavarachehu, and he blessed him. Vayomer, and he said, Re'eh reach beni, look, the aroma of my son, kareach sadeh, is like the smell of the field. Asher be'racho Adonai, whom Adonai blessed it. Like blessed the field. So the idea is kind of like, in the same manner that nature has been blessed by Hashem, so too his son will be blessed. Okay, so that's the end of the fifth Aliyah of Torah portion Toldot. Please put your comments or questions down below. and I will do my best to answer them or respond to them, or to, if you want to disagree on something, that's also fine. This is in the spirit of Jewish discourse. Continue studying, be encouraged. If something seems too hard, don't worry, you'll get there. It'll be absorbed. Shalom.